Here is another historical oddball. We have a mandolin. It's got a carved top, carved back, oval sound hole. It's not a Gibson A mandolin. This is luthier built, made in Canada in the 1930s. It's not copied directly from a Gibson, but it seems definitely inspired by one. And it's come down as a family heirloom. The story is, the current owner's mother was given this when she was about 11 years old, and her father had it made for her. Unfortunately, she didn't end up being a mandolinist. There are some playwear marks on it, but apparently she didn't take to it. Inside the body we have a date, a name, and an address. It says J. Nattau, 912 Hermine Street, Montreal. On the back it says June 1939. The thing is, there's no information on this guy at all. That's a pretty distinctive name. The family that ordered the mandolin were first-generation immigrants from Ukraine, and Nattau is also an Eastern European name found in Ukraine and Poland. Of course, in the 1930s, those had both been subsumed into the Soviet Union. But Jay, whoever he was, is not on the record. He's not in Ancestry. There are no other instruments of his found online. There are actually a few musicians with that name who are performing right now, but the pieces have not been put together about this. The street address in Montreal is no longer there. The street is still listed, but it's become a pedestrian alley between two modern buildings. There's a restaurant pour les steaks frites au coin de la rue, but you go down that dark and foreboding alley, there's nothing but stairs to work on your fitness or do some sick rail slides. Knowing repair customers as I do, if he was a full-service luthier, I suppose even to this day people go in there and holler, "Monsieur Nattau, I'm here to pick up the violin, eh? Où es-tu?" Because, yeah, I think this maker must have had some experience. I don't think this could have been his first or only instrument. Was this a hobby? Did he have actual training? I mean, there's not much information online about early 20th century luthiery in Ukraine. Just staying alive was pretty difficult. You were lucky if they allowed you to farm. But, you know, the place has the Carpathian Mountains running through it. They produce a lot of great tonewood. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is just, it's too good to be a one-off, you know? So why is it here? The owner would like to get it into playing condition. The neck... Ooh, a change. Yeah, then we got one of these perpetual note things happening. After the 7th fret, there's a very definite kink up here in the upper reaches around the body joint, which is preventing things from moving along tonally. There are also a couple of seam separations along the outline. There's one here in the neck region and another down towards the end of the body, which should probably be glued up. There's a seam separation in the top around the fretboard here, and it continues down into the body, stops somewhere around the bridge area. And this bridge is sort of very diminutive in its proportions. It's interesting. This is a patented tailpiece. Quite nice looking. It's a Bell brand. I'll have a look and see if I can find anything on those guys. What might go against the idea of a violin maker is this headstock is pretty, you know, kind of utilitarian. Interestingly, you'll see there's this flat that runs behind the nut. This was planed from one thick piece of timber. It was as thick as the heel there, and he planed the angle into the headstock out of that. The frets are kind of funky, sort of square in cross-section, which is almost unavoidable when you're dealing with wire that's this skinny. I almost mistook them for bar frets initially, but no, there is a tang. That's very tall wire for a mandolin in this period, or any period. Over 40 at least. Yeah. Width, 50 thousandths. These are old school tuners. Rather than screws, they have riveted the gears in place. Yeah, this looks like older than the 1930s. I wonder if this was scavenged from another instrument. The back appears to be flat sawn maple. There's this dark orangey brown varnish on there, which again could be a violin varnish. I think it may have actually been polished over with some like polyurethane at some point as well, I was told. But there seems to be enough of the original varnish there to, confirm that this was hand applied, maybe even finger applied, which is in some of the Cremonese traditions. I'm going to want to see the underside of the soundboard here. See if this grain really is as dark or if it's soaked up some of the color. It looks almost like fur. It's kind of interesting. The scale length on this is just around 13 inches, which is shorter than Gibson's, longer than old Neapolitan style. The other thing is the 12th fret starts on the body, over the body, we'll say. It's fairly far up there. Had a look inside to see if there was anything of interest, and there was. Namely, the one brace this thing had is now gone. There was a transverse brace below the sound hole, which is no longer there. I glued up the seam separations and clamped them closed. I used fish glue for this. Given this was made in summer in a time before widespread dehumidification, it's not surprising that the top shrank, and there's no way to force the sides into aligning without complete disassembly. So we'll do the best we can. I figure eventually darkening the light color of the seam will make it much less distracting. Here I'm planing some material for the cleat that will go under the fretboard extension. I have determined, using various clamps and surgical tubing and stuff, that there's really no way to push this crack closed enough that it's actually going to bond. I'm probably going to have to fill it with something, thin fillet of spruce. On this side, I'm going to use a little cleat under there, mainly to provide a surface for registering the filler strip, and this will provide some support. On this side, there's going to be the brace, which runs just about here, which will serve the same function as the cleat. My main concern really is to try and get these two halves to line up so that the top is perfectly level. Easier said than done sometimes. I have to sand the areas that'll be glued pretty well to knock off any dirt or oxidation that's happened in there, and then clean the surfaces as well as possible. I've got that clamped in there, making sure the position is where I want it. I'm going to do another little one on this side of the sound hole. The brace, of course, is going to be curved to try and mimic the underside of the top curvature, but there could be some slight discrepancies, because it's hand carved and everything. This, I don't want to force the top into one direction or the other so that there's like a lip or a misalignment. I want that flat, so this should help achieve that. Little Bubby Child says, no, you're gonna sacrifice your fingers tickling for catfish. Sometimes I find a come hither motion is most effective. I'll use some rare earth magnets to both position the crack and align it, and also to hold the cleat in place. The cleat has to be flexible enough to take on the curved contour of the top. Here I'm scraping to size a little fillet of spruce to fill in the rather large crack on this side. That slips in there, and because it's been compressed by the scraper, when the glue hits it, it's going to expand and be a really tight joint. I'll turn my attention to the frets in the upper half of the fretboard. Looking at the amount of height I had to work with, I felt pretty sure that simple level was going to take all of the the bumps and lumps out of it. So I'm going to mark my progress with some black Sharpie marker to see what I can do. And yeah, it's a bit of a mess up here. I end up removing about 8 thousandths worth of height from the frets, leaving me with about 33, which is fine. And you know, with frets that are 50 thousandths of an inch wide, there's not a whole lot of surface area there. But it does actually help to crown what you can and break those sharp corners. Ends up being much more comfortable. Flippity floppity with some 600 grit. I looked up the Ukrainian word for polishing. It's polirvanya, polirvanya, polirvanya. I'll use a profile gauge to make a profile of the outside arching of the instrument. I've got some old spruce for some bracing stock. It's going to be about 4.5 millimeters wide by about 6 millimeters tall. Doesn't have to be huge. This is basically to keep the area in front of the bridge from collapsing. Gibson's A-style mandolins, the early ones, many of them had only one brace in this area as well. So I'll mark the profile onto the brace stock here. I noticed that there was a definite flat spot, or almost a dip, in the center where the seam had separated, so I've compensated for that and will hopefully hold this thing up higher. There are different ways of shaping this. Some people would use a belt sander. I think a hand plane is probably the quickest way to do it, actually, and definitely the most satisfying. It's usual to taper the ends of the braces. This allows sort of a gradual transition of the forces that the brace is holding onto. You don't really want a tall right angle end to a brace. It focuses the strain in one place, and they can either kink the top or sometimes just pop free. So this is how it's been done historically for a couple hundred years. I'm going to do a dry fit to see how I'm going to get my fingers, the brace, and some clamps in there and try and do it neatly. Unfortunately, I neglected to press record when I was making the template. I used a compass to subtract the thickness of the top, which I measured at the sound hole, from the outside surface, so that I ended up with an arch that is much more closely related to the inside surface. And it turned out really well. It fit like a glove. I was very happy with it. Didn't have to adjust anything. It sat right down. No loose areas. I'll apply a moderate coating of fish glue to the brace. Don't need huge lakes of it in there. I collect clamps of weird lengths. If I see something that is out of the ordinary, I'll say, yep, put that in the box, because it's eventually going to be necessary. Like this little guy. This is a useless clamp for just about anything. It does not have a deep enough throat or a deep enough reach. But for this particular instance, it fits perfectly, assuming I can get my fingers around it. I'm going to use my scrapey jig to size a splint for the other side of the soundboard. Slightly longer, needs to be more regular. With this thing, I can take a piece of spruce down to about 4 thousandths of an inch, which is the thickness of a piece of paper. This splint is about 7 thousandths, and that's delicate enough that it's difficult to get glue in there. So I've got the splint started, and then I'll apply some fish glue on both sides and push it down into the crack. Sometimes it breaks on the way in, sometimes it doesn't. I'll stain the fresh wood with some markers. This is always sort of a get it as close as you can sort of thing. After this has had a chance to dry, I'll seal the color in with some shellac. I'll reinstall the tailpiece. I learned that this design of Bell brand was used on quite a number of inexpensive Regal mandolins from the 20s and 30s. Some of the nut slots are a bit high. I will lower them slightly. The bridge is made from beech wood, which is kind of an odd choice. A little soft, not one I would have used myself. And it's been stained black. It's also taken on a kind of sway-backed appearance. It's kind of collapsing in the center. So I'm going to glue some material on there and try to sort of keep that up and pull the ends down if possible. Well then, for the purposes of the video, I think that's about it for today. I am seriously thinking of taking the strings off and trying to do a bit of a heat treatment on this neck, because even with the fret dressing, there's enough bow in here that it's not particularly comfortable. It's a weird little mandolin. I know I haven't mentioned it, and I know that my scale is kind of off to a lot of people, but this is smaller than usual. It's about, well, it's less than 9 inches across the body, which would be about 22 centimeters. And like the scale length is about 1 inch shorter than a Gibson full-size mandolin. Interestingly, looking at that flat spot there, I wondered whether this was originally intended to be like a full-size Gibson scale length, which is like 13 7/8. This is about 13 inches, and that would, kind of bring us to about there. I don't know if that's possible or not. The fretboard appears to be ebony. Yeah. So I have set it up 4 64ths on the bass side, 3 on the treble, which is kind of standard. A lot of people like it lower than that. I don't think it's possible on this instrument. And yeah, it's charming in a way. I want to make it work better than it does. But again, it's kind of a how far do you take these things situation. Okay, these are absolutely fresh strings. They're still stretching, so forgive them that. This is being filmed on Sunday afternoon, right before the video's release.